I'll be off now." Waving at the photo in the living room, I stepped out under the blue summer sky, which was still hot and humid. I work at a small factory, mainly doing part repairs. My only solace in my tight financial situation is the picture of my wife in the living room and the one in my wallet of the two of us. No matter how depressed I got, looking at those photos always lifted my spirits. It's been 17 years since my wife went missing. No, not just my wife. A landslide hit the small town in Nebraska where we used to live, affecting many. She was one of them. The town was destroyed, and the survivors, with the help of the government, moved to a nearby city. The abandoned town is still covered in debris. Whenever I got a day off, I went back there, digging with a shovel, searching for any trace of my wife. Every time I met with fellow townsfolk, our shared pain was palpable. Why did she have to get caught up in that disaster? Why? Every time I turned the soil, regret consumed me. An out-of-office repair job. My boss, Mr. Davis, called me early upon arrival, hinting at a transfer due to a new department.
"You're good with people and knowledgeable. I believe you can handle anything on the field."
That's a bit of an overstatement. Unable to refuse, I begrudgingly accepted, feeling it had overwhelmed. The scope of the repair trips isn't clear yet. I've only been repairing what's sent in, which meant coming to office every day was all I've had to do. If this means driving to places, even thinking about it tires me.
"Please, you are the only one I can rely on,"
he added with some cliched words before I left his office. All I want is a peaceful life until retirement. But that's life, isn't it? I checked each tool, preparing for out-of-office requests. For the most part, I visited elderly people's homes. Fans at the beginning of summer, heaters in winter, and radios or TVs on some occasions. It felt like I was becoming a jack of all trades, but unlike my time confined to the factory, I now enjoyed hearing memories tied to the items I was fixing.
By the way, the neighbors were saying, "Oh yes, their oven's been acting up. Could you take a look while you're here?"
Mrs. Johnson mentioned this while treating me to some cookies. With 2 hours until my next appointment, I was contemplating going back to the factory, so the timing was perfect. But I'm not sure about the neighbors' availability.
"Don't worry about it. It's just an elderly couple like us. I bet they are free."
As she said this, Mrs. Johnson grabbed a few oranges from the table and we headed to their neighbors. Contrary to expectation, it wasn't a neighboring house, but a massive mansion behind them.
"The side door faces us, which is why we call them a neighbor,"
she said, ringing the doorbell.
"It's Rebecca."
"It's Johnson from next door,"
she announced.
"I heard your oven been having issues, so I brought someone over."
After a moment, the gate automatically opened.
"They used to own a lot of land around here. Our house was split from this mansion's property when they renovated. It's rare these days. They are very generous people."
Mrs. Johnson shared this as we approached the entrance.
"Hello, Rebecca. I just had him check our oven. Maybe he could help you too."
Rebecca, smiling warmly, invited us in. "That would be wonderful. Please come in."
"It seems the timer's messed up. I wanted to bake for 5 minutes, but sometimes it goes for 10, or even just 1.
Sitting in front of an old oven, I began my assessment.
"Mr. Smith here. He's from that landslide-affected town in Nebraska."
"Ah, I see."
I had grown used to hearing that as casual chatter. While eavesdropping on their conversation, I continued my maintenance work.
"Speaking of which, the helper who used to come here was also from that village, wasn't she?"
"Oh, the amnesiac one. I wonder how she's doing now."
My hand stopped abruptly.
"Oh, you're done with the repair."
No, not yet.
"It's an old thing. Must be tough fixing it."
That was the least of my concerns. What if? What if that amnesiac woman was my wife? Desperately I inquired. What did she look like?
"What do you mean?"
The woman from the village with amnesia. Rebecca smiled and showed me a photograph. In that moment, I trembled and tears welled up. Undoubtedly, the woman in the photo was my beloved wife. Her cheeks were a bit sunken, but it was definitely her.
Do you know her?
Rebecca handed me a handkerchief. Clutching it tightly, I curled up, overwhelmed by my emotions.
Are you okay? Maybe you should rest on the sofa.
Saying that, Rebecca's husband assisted me. That's my wife. The one in the photo. She went missing after that landslide. A faint scream was heard. A deep, roaring noise echoed in my ears. I felt dizzy and weak. When I next woke up, I was in a hospital.
You okay? You collapsed during the visit.
Sitting on a metal chair was my boss, Mr. John. I'm sorry. Why am I here? A dull pain ran through my head. Don't get up so quickly after being out, Mr. John said, pushing me gently back onto the bed. Right, Lisa was.
Yes, I heard about your wife. They're looking for her now. But she's being treated as a Jane Doe, so the administration isn't too strict with her. Apparently, they've made her a temporary ID. So we might not know her current situation.
I'm sorry. I've caused you trouble? Mr. John stood up, putting on his jacket.
Just take it easy for a while. I know the chief of hospital, so I'll speak with him.
I can't trouble you like that. Mr. John again pressed me down as I tried to rise.
Don't worry about it. If there are any updates, I'll let you know.
As the door closed, I felt drained. There shouldn't be anything wrong. Yet I felt so weak. Taking some time off. The chief doctor entered my room and remarked,
Remembering that day caused this collapse. You might not realize it, but your heart is deeply wounded. If you don't rest, there's a real chance you won't recover.
But I feel fine.
That's the dangerous mindset. Anyway, Mr. John gave his consent to stay. 3 meals a day, plus snacks, it's all inclusive here.
The chief doctor said with a jovial smile, then left. Restless, I got up and gazed out the window. My wife was definitely in this town. I was filled with frustration. I wanted to leave this place and search for her right away. But there was an 4 attached to my arm. Time only seemed to resume 2 days later when I received an update. Mr. John came by while I was having breakfast and handed me a note.
She's here. Just to be sure, I took Rebecca and the others yesterday, and it was indeed her. But keep your expectations in check. It could just be someone who looks like her. It's about a 30-minute drive from here.
Please, take me there. I put down my fork and, with tears in my eyes, begged Mr. John.
All right, but you'll only watch from a distance. You're not in the right state of mind, and we don't know how she might react if you approach her suddenly.
I just wanted to see my wife, even if it was just a glance. I agreed to Mr. John's conditions.
Here we are.
He had brought me to a local hotel near the beach.
She usually works and stays here. Wait here.
Mr. John entered the inn on his own to speak. While waiting, I decided to go out and listen to the waves. The vast, endless ocean lay before me. Thinking that my wife looked at this same view every day felt so surreal.
Hello, are you staying here today?
I froze. Tears welled up in my eyes. Turning around, there stood my wife. She looked like she was about to cry just from seeing my face. No. I just came to look at the ocean. I couldn't break my promise to Mr. John. I tried to put some distance between us by heading for the car door.
Excuse me.
I halted again. Tears were flooding, soaking the pavement. I intently listened to my wife's voice. Such a cherished voice. How many times have I longed to hear it since she went missing?
Do we know each other from somewhere?
I shook my head. People often tell me I remind them of someone they know. Just an ordinary face. The sea breeze is chilly. Can I head back to the car? She grabbed my arm. Tears were spilling from her eyes.
But somehow, seeing you makes me feel nostalgic. My heart feels stirred.
Unable to restrain myself, I hugged her tightly. Even with her memory loss, did a part of her still remember me?
I'm sorry, but we've never met, have we?
As I wiped away my wife's tears with a handkerchief, Mr. John approached. He looked upon us with a hint of sadness.
It's chilly out here. Let's go inside.
Once we were led to the room, I couldn't stop my tears. I was lost, not knowing what to do. The love I felt for my wife was overwhelming, but the thought of her memory loss also brought sadness. My emotions became too much to handle.
The director told me your wife seems as distraught as you. Fate really has its ways, doesn't it?
Mr. John poured hot water into the teapot and served me some tea.
You should rest for a bit. And then you discuss the next steps with the director and I. Let's not involve your wife in this discussion. It might only cause more confusion.
If I had the chance to meet my wife again, I would have hugged her right away. And we would have shared the peaceful moments and talked about the days we were apart. The deep scars of our past weighed on us like a cross. Reality was far from the ideal, and it pained my heart.
Looks like we'll be staying here tonight. Let's take it easy.
The tea Mr. John had served was lukewarm now. I took a deep gulp, took a deep breath, and recalled the image of my wife who was just in front of me moments ago. The night deepened, and after hearing Mr. John snoring, I stepped into the lobby. Outside the window, there was a full moon. It was just as beautiful as the night.
The full moon. It's beautiful, isn't it?
My wife was standing right beside me. Her eyes were red, probably from crying. Yes, it really is beautiful. We can see it so clearly from here. She slowly walked closer to me and stood side by side. How many years has it been? Looking down at her face, I noticed her long eyelashes. She used to be proud of those lashes.
For so long, a part of my heart felt lonely. But after meeting you, it feels like that gap has been filled. I feel so at peace right now.
I stared at the full moon, taking shallow breaths, making sure not to miss a single word from her loving voice. But my own heartbeat seemed exceptionally loud.
I heard from the director about everything. It's still hard to believe. Me, with you.
Turning towards my wife, I looked straight into her eyes. Please, don't say anything more. I'll wait until the day you remember everything.
But that's...
Tears started forming in her eyes again. 17 years. I've been searching for you alone for 17 years. Now that you're in front of me, I can wait even longer. This time, without any fear or loneliness. She nodded slightly and looked up at the full moon again. I wonder if she'll ever recall our shared memories. Right now, I don't know. But relying on the undeniable love between us, I believe that someday, she will remember me. Until that day, I'll come to see her as many times as needed.